Hey guys, and welcome back to Anvil of War Gaming.
Anvil of War! Army focus!
Adeptus Mechanicus.
So today on Army Focus, we're going to be talking about my Adeptus Mechanicus army. I've been collecting the hobby for approximately 15 years, and throughout that time, in some way or another, I've collected every single 40k faction. When Adeptus Mechanicus came onto the scene, I immediately knew I had to have them. I love these guys. The look, the feel of the army is very different to anything that had been in 40k at that time. They were an Imperial faction, but at the same time, they had this whole grittiness and darkness to them in the sense that they have, the servitors and they're kind of half machine, half man, and it just really kind of appealed to me in that sense. Collecting them was a bit of a challenge at first. When you go from playing all of the other factions in the 40k universe, all of the rules sort of apply to each other. Elder and Dark Elder have that relationship where a lot of the equipment, etc., kind of translates over. And then when you go from Space Marines to Chaos Space Marines, there's still a lot of tying in the different weaponry, etc., that they're using. When Adeptus Mechanicus came on the scene, everything changed. Everything was very, very different, kind of like when the Tau came on the scene. It was a new faction, exciting. Everything looked really, really interesting, and it had that appeal. I was a big fan of the sort of Roman look that the infantry had, and the sort of mystique that the hooded models had. Really kind of drew my attention. I love the look of the characters, the way that they have this sort of master machines, overlord kind of feel. I love the fact that all of the army is kind of controlled by them and everything is done via technology. They kind of feel like a cross between maybe Necrons meets Imperial Guard, and they definitely love to steal technology and use technology and harness it for the Imperium. So they're always going around the universe collecting all of the ancient artifacts and everything that they can to really boost the Imperial war machine. So that kind of gives you an idea of why I started to collect this army. So when I started to piece the army together, I decided that I didn't want to go with the traditional red Mars theme for the paint scheme. I decided I wanted to go a little bit darker, a little grittier, using a lot of metallics and blacks, just to kind of give them a war-torn, mid-campaign kind of look, making their armor really weathered. And during that process, I also factored in my past experience with 40k and knowing that in 8th edition, there's a lot of focus on the factions and the fact that if you collect a certain faction, you're going to have this certain rule set associated with it. But there's a big advantage to painting your army in a unique paint scheme. Yes, it does limit you when it comes to special characters because certain special characters are associated to only certain chapters, factions, etc. But the associated rules to each faction can be an advantage if you paint them in a custom paint scheme and then you choose game to game which type or which faction they're going to be following for that time frame. So for example, with Adeptus Mechanicus, you're going to want to have them associated to a specific Forge World. Well, the specific Forge World in this case, when Balsarius is leading the faction, is going to be Mars. But when I choose to use my other characters and create a different dynamic within the army, I can choose any of the Forge Worlds, and it really gives you that advantage tactically, and it gives you the opportunity to really try out different rule sets with your army so that you're not sort of stuck with that one every single time. In the fluff, there's a lot of room around the motives of Balsarius and creating the new Primaris Marines, etc. So there's room there, and there's a lot of rumors, etc., circling around the potential of the Dark Imperium and Balsarius's affiliation with it, and potentially maybe his motives are not so for the Imperium, and maybe they're a little bit more sinister. So if that ever ends up being canon in the future, then we're going to have, I'll be at an advantage with this darker paint scheme because they're already going to look the part a little bit. But that wasn't really the real motive. I really wanted the bright colors when I was painting these guys to really pop. You'll see with the plasma on both the Vanguard models and the Cataphragm destroyers, you'll notice that I went with the purple and pink color scheme to really give it a little bit of punch. The green on the backpacks, and anytime that I could throw in the neon green, I really wanted to contrast the dark metallics and the black paint scheme and really just kind of give it that little punch. As I was building the army, and I'm still in the process of continuously building this army, I have horrible painter's ADD, as I know a lot of collectors do. I slowly chip away at armies and add to them. So I have quite a bit of stuff still sitting on the shelf ready to go for these guys. I've at least got it primed and base coated, but I really need to get into painting the rest of the stuff because we are hoping to cover off some of the Forgebane campaign very shortly against some Necrons. So these guys are going to see some action, and I'd like to keep adding to the ranks to make a really epic sized army. When I was putting the army together for tournament play, because I was involved in a few tournaments throughout our local area, I really wanted to do the War Convocation. This is back in 7th edition. The War Convocation was just a really diverse army. It was a great formation. It was originally released in a White Dwarf magazine. And in that War Convocation, we also had to include an Imperial Knight. So that's where the concept came for HAL 9000. I threw him in the army. I really wanted him to have that AdMech feel. If you like this model, you should definitely check out the Conversion Corner video that we did on him. And when I incorporated him, I gave him that whole robotic feel so that he kind of tied in with both my Castellan robots and just the overall appeal of the army. Currently, I'm working on a couple Warglaves that are going to kick around on the tabletop with him and hopefully provide a little bit of support and give me a couple more Lord of War options for this army. As for weapon options for this army, I was a big fan of the Cataphragm destroyers. I didn't end up using some of the breachers. The breachers were really strong in 7th edition. I find that in 8th edition, the destroyers are really shining. I love the plasma Kelverns. They're kind of suicidal unit in the sense that if you overcharge them, they're gonna die with so many attacks, so many shots. There's such a good chance of them dying, even with the support of a character nearby and using that aura. But I really love the plasma theme. But whether you choose plasma or whether you choose Grav, these guys are really, really strong. For the Vanguard, I chose to use the plasma calivers. 3 plasma calivers in a 10-man unit is fantastic. They have shorter range weapons as it is, so the plasma caliver really complements what they're already carrying as a standard issue loadout. When they're running up the table, you kind of want to get these guys onto an objective marker, down the field, and you want to keep kind of pushing towards that objective marker and trying to, harass the enemy with some fire, some short-range fire. Eventually, I would love to see them release a transport of some sort for the Adeptus Mechanicus. I was so hopeful with some recent Forge World releases, but unfortunately, once again, they were for Space Marines and Chaos Space Marines. So eventually, someday, they will put out a transport, and us AdMech players will be very, very happy about it. Because these guys popping out of a transport that's possibly deploying 9 inches away from an enemy would be amazing. That 18-inch range and just the amount of shots that they can put out would be really scary. For the Rust Stalkers, I chose to use the Cord Claws. I think it's the more appealing loadout for them. And they haven't really overperformed on 8th edition, but I haven't used them in as many games because I really tend to lean towards my infiltrators. And the infiltrators with the taser goads and the fletchet blasters. The fletchet blasters work really well with the Mars stratagem. Just the sheer number of attacks that this unit can put out combined with the fact that if you roll 6 to wound, you're inflicting a mortal wound, I'm really tempted to add another 5 to the 5-man strong unit I already have and make a full complement, because the sheer number of shots and rolling 6s for mortal wounds would just be insane. Showing up 9 inches away from the opponent and then just pumping them full of shots, you're going to be able to put serious harm on big units, even though the fletchet blasters are a very low strength weapon. Combined with some of the canticles and then being able to make some rerolls for shooting, it can be really, really dangerous. I have magnetized most of my models. By magnetizing your units, you're not going to worry about future additions where one unit with this weapon was very strong and now this unit with this weapon is really strong. The magnets really give you that tactical flexibility to change from edition to edition, and also to try them out in the current edition. You can flip between each unit or each weapon and find out really competitively which one really works for you. So that's just a little bit of a tip that I've learned over the years of playing. So typically I equip the Doom Crawlers with neutron lasers and the 2 heavy stubbers, or Cognus stubbers, sorry. The reason that I do that is the neutron lasers just do so much work on the tabletop. The high strength, they can pump out a few shots. They're really like supercharged las cannons, and multiple shots. They can really whittle down big targets very quickly. They can inflict a lot of damage in a short period of time, and they do a flat 3 damage minimum. So they do D6 damage, and then they auto do 3 damage minimum, which is just insane. If you're shooting against vehicles, etc., this is your weapon to use. I do alternate once in a while using the Icarus array. If you know you're going up against an army that has a ton of flyers, like if you're going up against Tzeentch demons, for example, or you're going up against Dark Eldar or Drakari, I recommend probably using the Icarus just because it's really good against flyers, and it shoots out a lot of shots. The other weapon options I have touched on, but and I do have these magnetized again so that they can flip between the different weapons, but I'll be honest, I haven't had as much success with them. Next, we have the Iron Strider Ballistari. I chose to use these guys instead of the Dragoons just because, again, I wanted to go for a more ranged army, and the Dragoons, I don't really see them doing a lot in 8th edition. In 7th edition, they could be really strong with certain formations, and if you get the right canticles off, they do become a really powerful unit. But the Ballistari with the twin Cognus las cannon is really, really fantastic. The twin las cannon did a lot of work in our very first battle report. I know Ken is a huge fan of that model in the sense that it destroyed his Predator Annihilator in 1 shot, 1 turn, which was just completely unexpected. But I think that the Ballistari is a better option also in the sense that it's very maneuverable and you can still use that long range of the las cannons. And if you chose to use the autocannon variant, then it's also very, very strong. I haven't, again, magnetized so that I can use both. Finally, we're going to talk about the Castellan robots. I chose to equip these guys with the triple heavy phosphor blasters because the sheer complement of attacks and the decent AP value on these weapons, plus the decent range on them, makes them, I think, the better option, even though the flamers are pretty good and they are pretty nasty in close combat with the fists. So there's a few good options with them. You can mix and match the unit. I think the max unit strength for them is 6. So a big squad of 6 of them, although it's going to be very points heavy on your army, it's really, really effective when you blob them together and you throw maybe Belsarius or another character in the middle of them. Again, really points heavy, but the number of shots that you're going to be able to put out at that 36-inch range is going to be insane. And again, mixed with the Mars stratagem, you're going to be able to roll 6s and get mortal wounds, which is also terrifying with the sheer number of shots they put out, especially if you sit them still and you switch their protocols and you switch them over so that they're doing the shooting twice protocol. That's just terrifying. They're not able to move, but at 36-inch range, that's pretty decent, especially if you get them mid-table and then they're just going to sit there and just, they're going to delete units off the table once a turn, basically. So really scary unit. I currently have 2 Castellan robots, and I'm currently working on painting another 2. And when I have 4, I think that's probably where I'll stop, because I think putting 6 on the tabletop might be a little extreme and won't make me any friends. So that's probably where I will cut off with that unit size. Overall, that's my Adeptus Mechanicus army. I am still, like I said, painting a few more units and adding to the faction or adding to the army. I'm really excited about future releases. I would like to get some more Forge World mixed in with the army. So that's probably where I'm going to go in the future with it. But I hope you guys enjoyed, and thanks for watching.
Sponsored by...
If you like our video, you can check out more of our videos on the screen or down below. Models in the line